This is the biggest signing in Premier League history. The biggest signing in Premier League history. It really is as simple as that.
Big place to be for big discussion. We're going to be talking about this Koné transfer deadline, making it a very big week for Manchester United. Also, Lewis Hall transfer request. Is that about to happen? Interest from Juventus for Xerxes. The fallout and debate that's going on about the return of Marcus Rashford, with a lot of people not actually wanting him back. How do you surmount that obstacle if you're Manchester United? And some huge news tonight. Diomande to Real Madrid. Njai could be following Somerville to Saudi. And yet some United fans still say you don't need to spend money to sign good players. We'll delve into all of that, and we're driven by you because it's an 8 o'clock show. So get your comments and debates in. Happy to discuss about that. Very good show, very big show ahead for you. Also, we'll talk about Bruno Fernandes contract stalling talks there. We'll talk about that as well, whether that's cause for concern. Could Ollie Watkins be heading towards Manchester United a year after? Potentially we should have signed him and Sesko. Why do we always do it in halves? Also, could Xerxes be heading out the door? What is the latest with Baleba? We've got some more this morning from Romano about Koné, about Danilo, and about Baleba. We'll talk about that as well. A few other bits I want to talk about too. And also there was, I read the comments. I think you should do that as a creator. Always read your comments, because then you can delete the ones you don't like. No, you delete the abuse. But there is a comment that was actually very anti what I said last night that I want to bring into the show. Almost like a new section. I might try and take a comment or two from every show for the next show. So we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Basically, some people still having a problem with what I said last night, that this is the worst transfer window I think we've had in years. You are defending different shades of shit, by the way. If you think 2 years ago was worse or 4 years ago, the reality is I can't remember the last good transfer window we had. So you're arguing about different shades of shit, in my opinion. But look, let's get into the news. Would you take Ollie Watkins at Manchester United? This is going to be the first story. I do also think that one thing I did read this morning, and I will find the account who did it in a little bit. What I was talking about last night about Michael Carrick coming out after matches saying we're heading in the right direction, everything's positive, and people defending him and saying, well, what do you want him to say? Listen to what De Zerbi said yesterday. We've made some good signings, but we now really need to focus on the attack. This is what I'm talking about. You can have an opinion by all means, but don't dismiss somebody's opinion as negativity just because you're blind to the truth. De Zerbi has had an incredible summer transfer window. Van Heck, Tonali, Matheus Fernandes. These are amazing signings for a team that finished fourth from bottom. And he sat there in public saying, I want strikers now. Because he's in a position of power. They begged him to go and take that job to keep them up. And he said, I don't want it. And then they said, well, we'll give you power in the summer if you take it. And he did. And now he's got the power. And now he can sit there in press conferences and say, now I want this. He's just had Tonali and Matheus Fernandes bought for him. And he's going, well, it's not good enough. I want strikers now. And we've got a manager who's not even had the midfield rebuilt. And he's going, we're heading in the right direction. That's what people talk about. That's what people are talking about when we talk about a manager that drives the standards of the football club. We've got a manager that's submissive to an ownership that's abysmal. That's my problem with it. I'm not anti Carrick. I'm just saying, I don't think he puts the right things out. Just because he's a nice guy doesn't mean he's a great manager, does he? Would you sign Watkins? There we go. Let me know in the chat there. So look, this coming out in the last, well, I sort of saw it this morning. I think it's been around for the last 24 hours. So Fenerbahce have been looking at Watkins and had almost agreed done an agreement apparently. A 3-year deal. They're looking to get him for about £25 million. Villa want more like 35 million. And in the last sort of 24 hours, it's been reported that Man United and Arsenal are both interested in Watkins, with Xerxes attracting interest from Italy again. United are exploring other options. And if Xerxes was to leave, the club are expected to make an approach for Watkins. I mean, what I would say here straight away is, why are we a sell-to-buy club? Why are we sat there going, Joshua, I know you're having I know you're playing with Mason Mount and Luke Shaw at the moment and having a great time, like you're on bloody holiday. They're like three kids who are in a swimming pool playing around. When you finish, can you come and dry off and let's have a chat about what we're doing for dinner? Piss off, I'm playing with my mates. Well, when you've got a minute, can we have a chat? So don't get angry. Go and get him an ice cream. Don't get angry. We're thinking you might want to go back to Italy. You don't. Okay. You go back and play with your friends. You do? Oh, good. Well, reluctantly, we would like you to go to Italy, and then we're going to go and buy Watkins. This is just not how you behave as a football club. What do you mean if Xerxes decides to leave, we'll move for Watkins? It's the wrong way round. It's the wrong way round. We should be going and getting the player we want so that the player we need to leave realises he's not wanted. And I don't understand why, at the end of last season, Michael Carrick and Jason Wilcox didn't sit Xerxes in a room and say, we're going to sell you. So that he's got all of June for his agent to find him a club. And now we're sat here nearly in August going, if Xerxes moves, we might move for Watkins. It should be the other way round. And that's what worries me about United and the striker. Realistically, I actually remember a year ago when we were talking about Watkins to United, and United did make a move. United do like Watkins, whether you like it or not, they do. They made a move before they even moved for Xerxes, and he was too Sesko, and he was too expensive. So United definitely like Watkins, whether you do or not. What we should have done last summer is buy both. We should have bought Watkins and Sesko last summer, because actually, when you look across the season, there were times where Watkins as a striker would have been very useful when Sesko was injured or settling in. So we should have bought both. And people go, we fall into the cheapskate either or. But we should have gone for both, really, when you look at it, because I would like to have Watkins now with Sesko for next season with Champions League football. I think that would be a really good duo, and I'd be very, very happy with that. This is exactly the sort of experienced Premier League backup striker that Man United need. And look, Diz says I don't think he's very good. Well, I disagree. I think he'd be absolutely perfect for what United need in a market that's not glaringly obvious. I mean, I wouldn't go for Ivan Toney. Welbeck's too old. I think Ollie Watkins would give us 2 or 3 years, and then hopefully something's coming through in the youth team that's decent. I mean, we're crying out for a young striker at Man United to come through the youth. I don't know whether there is anybody. But no, I wouldn't mind this deal at all. And I think Watkins would like to do it himself. He wanted to go to Arsenal before. But the big barrier here is quite clearly moving Xerxes on. And I saw this from Simon Stone this morning, and it took my breath away. Any potential exit for Xerxes will likely be a loan move back to Italy. A loan move. You've got people, you've got average players in the Premier League being sold for 50 million quid. And the best we can hope for is a loan move for a striker that I actually think has value. Why would an Italian club not give us 25 million for Xerxes? I mean, that's the one player I actually thought we might get some money for. And we're loaning. I mean, if Man United turned up on the bloody deck of the Titanic as it went down and had a bag full of life rafts, they wouldn't be able to sell it to any of the passengers. Even though it would save their lives, we'd somehow fuck the deal up. It's ridiculous. We just can't sell. We cannot sell. And the intelligent fans out there have figured this out. It's not necessarily about who we're buying this summer. It's the fact that we all know that team needs huge improvement. And we can't generate a pound. But look, it's a big week ahead for Manchester United. We seem to say this every week in a transfer window, don't we? When we're running out of time and we go, surely we'll do something this week, because we still need to do more than half of that. I was having this chat, actually. I popped down the local just for a couple of pints this afternoon, and somebody was very, very kindly at the bar, had a chat with me. And they were talking about the summer transfer window. And just as part of the conversation, I sort of said, when you think about it, we're more than halfway through this transfer window, and we've still got over half of our business to do. So we're not actually moving at a very, very quick pace either, are we? So yeah, look, we're at the start of the week. Hopefully by this time next week, we'll have done some business. And I would expect the conclusion of whatever's happening with Koné, because apparently Roma have set a deadline and Koné have set a deadline of the end of July to get things moving. Roma are apparently frustrated with United. We'll talk about that in a moment. I also think in relation to Lewis Hall, we're going to need a transfer request, and he's going to need to say he only wants Man United. We'll talk about that too. But a couple of things that have just swerved the start of the show a little bit that you might have seen in the last few minutes from Romano. First of all, Diamonde is not going to PSG, he's going to Real Madrid. And the fee, I believe, is 100 million euros. 100 million euros for Diamonde. So he's actually gone for 100 million euros. But then another story's come out that Al Hilal are open talks with Everton to try to sign Njai. Negotiations at an early stage, but Al Hilal want one more star after Somerville, and Njai is high on their shortlist. A deal depends on Everton as player side open to initial discussions. I mean, look, this is the United stand. I'm not here to moan about the export of decent Premier League players in their mid-20s going to Saudi, but I do think, it just shows you money talks. I never understood it when Ramirez and Oscar went from Chelsea to China in their mid-20s. Well, it's money, and we're seeing it again now, aren't we? And I just think these players are, in my opinion, I understand. I don't really criticise the Saudi League, by the way. I understand why they're doing it. There's a World Cup coming up there, and they want to be good. And for a league that spent hundreds of millions of pounds for the last 4 years, they're still shit in as a national team. They were crap in the World Cup. So, they want to be a relevant footballing force, and they're going to spend a load of money again, aren't they? Because their team is actually not very good. But they're out spending money again. How does this impact on Manchester United? Well, look, I'm sure many of you have read the live chat, the comments, been on social media, and you might be like me, getting a little bit tired of people saying you don't need to spend money to be successful, despite football being literally full of evidence that you do need to spend money to be successful. But let's go back to the start. Let's go back to March. Let's go back to April. Let's go back to February. Let's go back to every little bit of news that's come from credible and incredible sources. Man United's midfielders were always Anderson, Tonali, Bruno G in March, Tchouameni, Wharton. We've signed none of them. Fernandes, maybe even Scott. That's 7 midfielders. 0 out of 7. 0 out of 7 of all the midfielders that United were happy to be linked to all the last few months of the season. We signed 0 out of 7. Why have we signed 0 out of 7? Because we won't spend money. We won't spend beyond a certain limit.